Welcome to Brewsers, a podcast about beer, coffee, booze, and bruisers. I'm your host, Roddy John, and today we speak to Eric and Nick with Atypical Brewing out of North Dakota. We talk all about their origins, their historic location, and so much more. This is such a fun conversation I had with both Nick and Eric from Atypical Brewery. Their historic location is a old gas station, and you might think, why is that so historic? But go look them up, and you'll see how beautiful it is. You'll see how fantastic they renovated it, and it is a historic landmark. So it is such a good conversation, and we'll get right into it. But first, make sure to sign up for our newsletter. It comes out twice a week. You get even more information about our guests. You get fun facts, and you get to find out what's happening with your favorite podcast, all about beer, coffee, booze, and bruisers. So without further ado, here is Nick and Eric with Atypical Brewery. I would like to welcome to the show Nick and Eric with Atypical Brewing. How are y'all doing today?
Doing pretty good.
Awesome.
So for those listening, I guess tell us who you are and what's going on around you right now.
Yeah, Eric, go ahead.
Yeah, so I'm Eric, sort of also known by Eric the Sour, kind of from our from the homebrewing days, actually, but it still applies. So I'm the head brewer. Nick and I are the majority partners in the company. Nick does some brewing too, definitely knows how to get around in the brew house, but sort of transitioned into doing more of the financials as we've grown, so that's kind of our roles. And let's see, we've been making beer for about 5 years now. We do, all kinds of different varieties. Our flagship, kind of our most popular one, is London Fog, and that's like to just have a nice, easy drinker on tap, and that's kind of what this one is. It's all available all the time, and it is a cream ale that features vanilla and then Earl Grey tea. So we like to do a lot of different kind of fun, unique ingredients, hence the name Atypical. So, the Earl Grey tea is kind of a nice, unique twist on that one. Some other crazy stuff we do, like we've chopped down a juniper tree and hollowed out the trunk and put all the boughs in the trunk and then transferred our wort through that, so it infused with the juniper. That's probably one of the most out there ones, but we do some spontaneous fermentation. We like to use as much local ingredients as we can, even though we're in a cold climate. Most recently we have 100 pounds of local cherries that we got a beer working on. So keeping it local, keeping it interesting, unique ingredients, that's kind of who we are.
And Nick?
Yeah. This my second go around with the brewery. I started at one of the founders of Cirrus River Brewing, and that was almost 10 years ago now. I was there for 4 years, and then transitioned over to starting Atypical with Eric, and we found a pretty unique building, property that my friend owned. It used to be a gas station originally, but it was a cottage-style gas station. So it's got this little A-frame building, and we turned the main garage area into the tasting room. And we even kept the original oil-changing pit, and we put a glass floor over the top of it. And we might eventually turn it into a beer cellar, but for now we just kind of decorate it with the seasons. It's just a cool feature. And our buddy, who is also part owner, silent partner, he owns his own woodworking shop, and it happens to be adjacent to our property, so it was nice and easy for him to build out our brewery, being that close, and he just does amazing work. So the building and the brewery, tasting room, everything has a unique old cottage feel to it, and he brought that all together and did great work. So yeah, not only do we do kind of neat brews, we have a neat atmosphere as far as the look of the place as well.
Yeah, when I was doing my research, it said that you guys were located, they call it the Historic Westland Gas Station that dates back to 1927. I was like, okay, cool, it's a gas station, down here in Texas. It's, most gas stations just look like regular gas stations. Most of them also have great taco shops inside of them. And I was like, okay, cool, they have a brewery in there, and, I guess, I don't know why it's historic. And I looked at it, and I was like, oh, now I get it. Because, yeah, like you said, it looks like an old cottage, and the fact that it is a gas station definitely does give you guys this extra feel to it and extra little fun, like you were saying. How did you guys stumble across this and decide, okay, this is where we're going to do it at?
Like I said, my friend, he had owned the property for a long time, and it was kind of dirt floors, and it was down to the studs. I think it had remained that way after a flood in the 60s here. So part of it was just kind of his business shop and a little bit of storage. And a lot of people had approached him about, getting in there and putting something in as far business wise. And he was always open to it, but he was kind of waiting for the right fit. And when we approached him about a brewery, he got a little more excited than some of the other ideas that came at him. And, we just started writing the business plan and moving forward with it. So we kind of lucked out there that we actually knew him. So
that's awesome. Yeah, that place looks amazing, and I definitely obviously need to make a trip up to North Dakota to check it out in person, because I definitely got to see how you guys converted this thing.
Yeah, it's fun too. We have some artist friends in town, so we have a back event area, and we've got some murals up from some local artists that are pretty cool. So we just have fun with it. Dylan's pretty good about allowing us to do what we want and make it look and feel how we want. So it's a cool property.
Now, let's go all the way back in time. What is y'all's earliest memory of beer?
Ooh. Mine might have been, I lived in Eugene, Oregon for a little stint, and I didn't know too much about craft beer, but I started checking out some of the breweries around there and just kind of got hooked on some of the local stuff. I mean, before that it was like Keystone Light and anything, whatever was coming my way. But yeah, once I started dabbling in some of the different flavors and tastes, I got hooked on the craft beer. So I can't name one in particular. Maybe it was Bell's Two Hearted. Potentially, I drank a lot of that. So when I first started getting into craft beer.
For me, most people would probably laugh now and say that it's not a craft beer, because it's probably not. But for me, it was Newcastle was the first thing I started really drinking that wasn't just a macro beer. So that was, I would say that's the first beer that kind of made me interested in what other flavors beers could have. And so from there, started experimenting more into different stuff. Bell's Two Hearted is probably definitely a really good, example of that. But, even old school, Fat Tire, classic. And even, I've gone up and down. I've never been a huge hophead, but, like the 2000s, like the hop wars where everyone was trying to make beer as bitter as possible. I wasn't huge into a lot of those kinds, but, for a long time I was a big dark beer guy. So stouts, porters all day long. And then, from there, for me personally, it was into the sours, and that's what got me home brewing, especially is there wasn't a lot of them available, and when they were fairly expensive. So I was like, hey, I'll try making my own, and sort of that's where my brewing journey began too.
Very nice. Yeah, I mean, y'all kind of just skipped right to my next question about what was your gateway craft beer. So, good, because obviously, I think we all we start off with the, Keystones, the Buds, the Coors. And so, it is always that one beer that you're just like, oh, this is what beer could and should taste like. And so I'm going to really look more into this as opposed to, oh, that's what beer tastes like. Okay, I'm going to go find something else. So you just touched on it. Can you? How did you then get into actually making your own beer at home?
For me, it was just a couple of buddies had been brewing a little bit, and I was interested, so I decided to go do a brew day with them. And it was probably at that time it was a kit from Northern Brewer, and it ended up turning out pretty well. So we just did a couple more of those, and then all of a sudden I found myself buying a bunch of homebrew gear from Northern Brewer, and just kind of started in the kitchen with 5-gallon batches, and then made my way into our basement with a little bigger setup and doing 10, 15-gallon batches, and then from there it was just I met a couple people that liked my beer, and they were looking to start a restaurant / brewery, and hooked up with them, and that was the first brewery, how we started getting going on that.
Nice. So how did Atypical Brewing begin?
Yeah, so I can actually probably so Nick was kind of doing all this a few years ahead of when I was getting into brewing and doing all that. And so Minot actually has a fairly small but robust homebrew group community. And so one of the places that we used to meet was at Nick's previous place. And so for myself personally, I just kind of started home brewing as, like I said, I wanted sour beer, and there wasn't a lot available, but also very quickly realized you can't just jump right into that. You need to know how to make just regular beer first. And so that kind of started the whole process for me. But yeah, we were meeting at Nick's old establishment, and then simultaneously I'm just kind of a competitive person by nature, but so I was also looking for feedback from people other than just friends and family who say, oh, this is good. I wanted, unbiased opinions, if you will. And so started sending beer to competitions, and started doing fairly well at some of them. And at one point, one of those beers I brought to a meeting, and Nick said, oh, this is really good. Why don't you come down sometime and we will do a batch here, at the place that he was at previously. Long story short, Atypical does not have a restaurant, and that was intentional. And sort of, Nick ended up getting an offer to buy his old place out, and he was also interested in leaving the restaurant aspect behind. And so the idea of Atypical sort of was born in that sort of conjunction of needs and ideas, and I had been a teacher for at that point about 7 years, and I was kind of looking for something else to do as well. It took me a couple more years to actually retire from teaching, but that's kind of in a nutshell the way Atypical came about.
Very nice. You mentioned that there is a wealth of home brewers there, which I imagine